San Diego, one of the co-chairs of our programs committee, and I'm excited to welcome you today to our program. Our speaker today is Brian Quinn, and he's from Lawyers Concerned for Lawyers of Pennsylvania, an organization of lawyers and judges for the benefit of the bar. And today's program is about virtual isolation, whether hyperconnectivity is helping or harming the legal profession. Both. So, Brian, I will turn it over to you.
All right, sounds good. It's great to be back with you folks. As I've expressed in the past, one of the most rewarding aspects of my now, as I complete my 7th year as the coordinator for education and outreach at the Pennsylvania Lawyers Assistance Program, has been my relationship with ACC. It began in Philadelphia, which is close to where I live, but has obviously grown, and now I'm happy to say that I've presented for your chapter as well as 2 other chapters in California and some of the other Mountain West states, as well as many in the East. And I don't think any of us knew much about each other. I don't think many of the people that I am used to dealing with in the lawyer assistance world knew what ACC was, and I think the same seems to be true about lawyers assistance programs and in-house corporate counsel.
Brian, can you talk louder? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Sure. Does this sound any better? I don't know why that would be. I have a pretty loud voice. How does it sound now?
I hear you okay, so maybe some people need to turn up their speakers on their end.
Nobody's ever accused me of being soft-spoken. Let's put it that way. So if you don't hear me sound like I'm shouting,
you're very
turn
faint.
up the volume. This program's a little bit different than ones that I've done for you before, but I do like to start by discussing the type of organization that I work with and for here in Pennsylvania. Obviously, being California attorneys, I made sure that I included information regarding the state bar's lawyer assistance program in California, and who they help, and how they do it. Obviously, these services are voluntary, they're confidential, and each state has its own program in this country. It's not a national system. So obviously the rules that apply to each state's program may differ. You need to be familiar with not only your business and professions code in California, but the specific services that the Lawyers Assistance Program of the State Bar of California provides. So I've included some of this information from your business and professions code, and that information that's in slightly larger font and bold font at the bottom of the slide here is very important, because it really speaks to the issue of confidentiality and why lawyers don't usually reach out and ask for help. Many fear that the information won't be held confidential, that they are concerned that it will be somehow shared or reported. So you obviously need to know that any information obtained by the Lawyers Assistance Program in California is confidential and cannot be disclosed as part of a civil proceeding, a disciplinary proceeding, or a public records request. Many people feel that, if they've committed an ethical violation, that somehow these rules don't apply. They specifically apply, and they're in there for that reason, because the Lawyers Assistance Programs work very closely with licensing, with the state bar, with the court system, and the courts want to encourage lawyers to reach out and ask for help, because the problems that are facing our profession are not just what people may call the traditional problems with alcohol or some other substance, but now we see the primary presenting issues are really mental health related. Mental health related. For many years, lawyers assistance programs would be, as I said, associated with, let's say, people with a drinking problem, and that's because lawyers felt more comfortable about alcohol than they did anything else. So maybe when they called, they would say, "Well, I want to discuss what some people think, or what I even may admit to having, which is a problem with alcohol." But they didn't want to talk about perhaps why they were drinking, why they were using alcohol, perhaps to self-medicate, because those other issues may have dealt with their mental health. And lawyers don't like to talk about problems that they are having in general. In general, part of the profession, part of the personality, part of the traits of people who practice law or are in the legal profession, in-house corporate lawyers or otherwise. So as a result, the courts have tried to encourage people to ask for help, and they, by including that what is essentially an exception to the duty to report known misconduct. So once again, always familiarize yourself with the services, the specific services provided by your LAP, and also the rules that govern attorneys in your state. I've included the resource information for some of you who may practice in more than one state. I've included a directory of lawyer assistance programs by state, the specific site for the California State Bar Lawyers Assistance Program, their toll-free confidential helpline numbers, and how you can reach them, and their physical locations as well. One in San Francisco, one in Los Angeles. There are specific sites that handle confidential peer support, the otherbar.org. I've spoken for that organization as well, and the mental health and substance misuse resources that the American Bar Association provides to members of our profession. So once again, this is nothing new. The legal profession has been at risk to develop problems for many years. Excuse me, I've been doing a lot of speaking lately. Certainly long before the impact of COVID. A lot of people want to blame COVID for everything. And I can assure you that while it may have exacerbated some issues, and some of which I'm going to talk about today, but we've been at risk to develop problems with mental health issues and substance misuse for many, many years. Now, the problems facing us in our profession are certainly well beyond just the use of alcohol. And I want to make this specific point with ACC, and I do this whenever I can when I present to you. The number one presenting issue among members of the in-house legal counsel world, okay, is stress. Stress is the number one presenting issue. Anxiety, depression, other mental health issues, yes, but no question about it, stress is number one. And where does that lead us to? It leads us to burnout, frankly. That's where the stress cycle begins, becomes distress, and then distress leads to this thing called burnout. If I have a few minutes, maybe I'll talk about the specifics of that and how it relates to today's topic. But for the most part, as I said, this is a little bit different problem. Patrick Krill, who's a lawyer and a certified drug and alcohol counselor, is best known for his study is really what was the first scientific study of its type that dealt with all these issues that I've already mentioned, and lawyers. He did it back in 2015. He did it when he was involved with the Hazelden and Betty Ford Foundation, and they did that study in conjunction and at the request of the American Bar Association. And what did Krill find? Well, first of all, his findings were characterized by him as being incompatible with a sustainable professional culture. So here we have what Krill found in 2015. He published his results in the Journal of Addiction Medicine in early 2016, when he revealed that 28% of all attorneys suffer from depression. And by depression, we are not speaking about the ups and downs of everyday life, the mood swings that we all experience as people. We're talking about people, by the way, Krill, lawyer and certified drug and alcohol counselor. He has training in the medical profession. He knows what the DSM is, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, used by medical professionals as kind of the Bible of mental health disorders. So when he sent the questionnaires out anonymously and confidentially to over 13,000 lawyers in this country, and look back at the results, he analyzed them in his capacity as a healthcare professional, compared them to the symptoms that are required by the DSM, and said, these people aren't just telling us they're depressed, they're presenting with issues that if they were going to a medical professional and presented the same issues to them and the same symptoms to them, would be diagnosed with a depression disorder. Okay, 28% of lawyers, 7% of our population suffers from depression, 28% of attorneys. So, and higher rates among younger lawyers of stress and anxiety. But as I mentioned, when Krill broke it down, and his study is interesting for many reasons, but for the in-house corporate lawyer, you may want to see where you fit into the picture, I suppose. And it was not depression, number one, it was stress. So many people, as I said, tell us that the impact on our mental health was certainly, it was a negative impact that the quarantine had, the imposed isolation. You know, it used to be that we heard people who were stuck at home, maybe due to sick kids, or although in San Diego you don't have this too much, but we have weather-related events, say, well, at least I still have good Wi-Fi. Then came the imposed isolation caused by the COVID-19 crisis, and the need for connectivity was never greater than during the darkest months of the pandemic. We texted, chatted, Zoomed with our family and friends. We held virtual happy hours, had our medical appointments online, which was a new experience for most of us. Technology provided a lifeline: Zoom meetings, virtual meetings, court appearances virtually, CLEs, and other virtual sessions really became part of our daily routines. And as a result, we began to see our colleagues two-dimensionally on our screens rather than face-to-face. So with screen time rapidly increasing in our world, what was the effects on our brains? And I can assure you that most people felt that there was a negative impact as the result of the quarantine. So, you know, many of you may be thinking, you know, how can, when you're this imposed isolation, but I had all these other outlets available to me online, and a smartphone in my hand, and I could do just about anything I wanted right from the comfort of my own home. Never had to go anywhere. That's the whole point. Is that healthy? So that's what this program's really about, how hyperconnectivity and technology affect our brains and our mental health. And like many people, we were all, and to a great extent, still are trying to cope with what is now, I'd say, universally accepted to be a collective, societal, even generational traumatic event, referring to the pandemic, regardless of the type of law you practice. So let's talk about some of the impacts. Some people say, well, we don't have to go too far because this was a traumatic experience for us, having gone through this period of time when the COVID pandemic changed our new normal, became something still undefined in my opinion. But be that as it may, lawyers and trauma are not strangers, and many lawyers face it on practically a daily basis. And it doesn't necessarily have to be trauma that's work related. Trauma is not just something physical. It's emotional. It's psychological, and many people have trauma in their lives outside of work, but sometimes they carry it with them during their workday, and it can get unexpectedly triggered by any number of events, some of which happen to us virtually and online. So we were inundated with a lot of information that not only caused anxiety, but also distracted us from doing our work. And we can take those distractions with us wherever we go. So I want to share some startling statistics with you shortly. But many experts believe that while smartphones and other devices provide great benefits to our society, including during the pandemic, those benefits come, as I said, at a great cost to our mental health. There are we're inundated with information that can sometimes cause anxiety, and the overuse of devices in and of itself is connected to increased levels of anxiety, depression, and poor sleep. And by the way, as you're going to hear, increased risk of car accidents. So did the tools and toys of technology aid us in our loneliness or add to it? Did video chat pull us apart by replacing the conference room, or did it allow us to stay in touch through those many months of social distancing? More importantly, did it make us dependent on it? Did hyperconnectivity imprison us? Are we shackled to our screens? And are we still shackled to our screens? Did we become just like those mobile devices of ours? Never turned off, just going on standby mode at the end of the day? And can we, as members of a profession fraught with stress, anxiety, and depression, as I've already mentioned, not to mention high rates of alcoholism and addictive behaviors, learn to put the brakes on those behaviors? I didn't bother to mention what Krill found with respect to the use of alcohol, but I guess I will now. Let's start with this. 6.4% of our population are problematic drinkers. What's that mean? That means someone who drinks to the point of it being hazardous to their health or possibly alcohol dependency. 6.4% are either drinking hazardously or alcohol dependency. Problematic drinking. Lawyers, Krill found, 21% of all lawyers are problem drinkers. Young lawyers, or lawyers within their first 5 years out of law school, so we'll say lawyers under the age of 30 or within their first 5 years. 32%, basically a third of the lawyers 30 years of age and younger are problematic drinkers. Not one or two too many, once or twice too often. That's not what we're referring to here. So I want to discuss a specific aspect of this phenomenon and the conversations that we should and really must have as lawyers in light of the already high prevalence rates that I just pointed out to you. And that means speaking about isolation. And I know I refer to this program as virtual isolation and hyperconnectivity. So I'm referring to both social and what I call virtual isolation. And I say that because it's become easier for us to fit in and to simply say, hey, this is happening to everybody, not just to me. And guess what? This is the first time I've mentioned isolation in a program about the substance misuse and mental health issues facing lawyers. Impairment, in other words, in our profession. In fact, as I said, I began this role of mine in 2017, and the very first program I ever presented had a slide on it that read, what are the common warning signs of addiction or mental health disorders in the law firm setting? And what was number one? Isolating and avoiding interactions. a change in the baseline that someone starts to exhibit. Lawyers love to hide already and always have loved to hide what's going on in their own lives because we see ourselves as problem solvers. We don't want to appear weak. We may call ourselves problem solvers, but in many cases, we have really become little more than problem collectors, collecting other people's problems all day long, never taking time out to discuss with ourselves or anyone else our problems. The problems of the person that looks at you every day in the mirror. Yeah, that's right, you. Was that 2 weeks ago that I said I was going to start to do this or stop doing that or change this or wow. I'll get to it. I probably would have, but for the fact that all these other problems came up that I had to help some other people with. The office, the company suddenly did this or did that, and we had fewer people around to help, so I had to pitch in, whatever the excuse may be. So that file, that folder with your name on it, after it makes its way to the top and okay, now I'm going to do something to help me. Something comes along. You say yes to everybody else, folks. And that does not have to be part of saying no to yourselves. It's not, well, I said yes to you. It means I come last. That's what we do. That file with our name on it goes to the bottom of the pile and has to kind of work its way back up to the top. Before there was social media and an ability to unfriend someone or maybe use a camera screen with a dignified portrait of yourself or a beautiful nature scene during a Zoom meeting, a lawyer in distress or in full-blown impairment can only hide by using a more surreptitious approach. You called out sick, you didn't answer the phone. If someone came to check on you at home, you turned the lights off. Maybe you did what many people do who are starting to face these issues. You only went to places to physically seek refuge where, unlike Cheers, nobody knew your name. So I want to examine isolation a little more closely in general, look at it from a physical and an emotional point of view. So I call it aloneness, and I break it down into these two concepts, solitude and loneliness. So what's the difference between solitude, loneliness, and isolation? Well, some may believe that loneliness, solitude, and isolation are exactly the same thing, but there are key differences between those three states. Solitude is the objective state of being physically alone, which is usually accompanied by the subjective experience of enjoying one's own company. Now, loneliness is a feeling, an emotion, and a perception of a general sense of lacking connection or belonging, while also desiring more connection with others than one actually has. It's that belief that no one understands our circumstances, thoughts, or emotions, but more importantly, it's a belief that no one cares, that no one cares. So isolation, as I said, is a state of being physically alone and lacking contact with others, whether by choice or by extenuating circumstances. It could be due to age. It could be ill physical or mental health. It could be something as simple as lack of transportation or even a quarantine like we all went through. So they're connected. That is loneliness, solitude, and isolation. Can occur as a result of being alone, physically isolated from others. Whereas loneliness has been described by psychologists and social neuroscientists as painful isolation. Solitude is qualified, on the other hand, as desired isolation, and clearly one state is more appealing than the other. So while they may seem similar to one another, they are not identical. Where loneliness and isolation are generally not desired states because they leave a person wanting more connection with others, solitude enables a person to be alone with themselves while enjoying their own company. And by the way, you remember I mentioned the high rates of depression. If I had the DSM criteria and symptoms on the screen right now, and you see feelings of hopelessness, worthlessness, impending death, suicidal thoughts, apathetic, glum, feeling sad all the time, all the way down at the end of those list of symptoms is social and occupational social and or occupational distress or isolation. So suddenly, in light of what we've all been through with the pandemic, social isolation, those words suddenly mean something different to us, but yet they've been in the symptoms of the DSM for clinical depression for many, many years. And while we were, and to some extent still are, in this state of maybe techno loneliness, many developed an addictive cycle of stimulation and reward. And it's all about something called dopamine. Dopamine and social reward. So what's dopamine? Because back a couple of slides ago, I didn't stop to mention it, but that is one of the things that we see that plays a very large role in people's behavior when it comes to screen devices and some of the stimuli that we experience. Dopamine's a brain chemical that's linked to motivation. It's released when we taste something delicious, exercise, when we have a positive social interaction. Dopamine basically rewards us for behaviors that benefit and motivate us to do them again. So the reward pathways become active when either anticipating or experiencing a rewarding event. So every time a stimulus response results in a reward, those associations get cemented in our brain, so we want to keep on doing them. So whenever we receive a like or a kind comment on something we post on social media, we feel a sense of validation. But it's a sense of validation that isn't always healthy. So I want to look at some of the devices that we use every day of our lives and how many of us have become shackled to our screens. So where else could we possibly start than with television? Television. Yes, the older we get, the more television we watch. Maybe a lot of people knew that already. We didn't need a survey to tell us about that. But did you know that the percentage of homes with more than 3 television sets is 66%? That 49% of us say that we watch too much TV? How about what we're watching? Or more importantly, what are our kids watching? And I mentioned kids. Let me just say this. Let me go back to the very beginning. Lawyer assistance programs. Check your lawyer assistance program. See how far the extent of their services are. Because many, many times they will assist family members, not just a licensed attorney, depending on what some of the issues are. Family members. And many people, when they see this presentation of mine, I think have told me, I think it's because they have experienced it vicariously, or they see members of their family, mostly younger folks, dealing with some of the stigma and the negative impacts of social comparisons and social settings. But getting back to what people are watching, kids, I'm going to talk about first. By the time an average child finishes elementary school, they have seen depicted on a television, a thing that is in our home in many, many places. 8,000 murders have been seen by the average child by the time they finish elementary school. Depictions of a murder. Violent acts seen on TV by age 18, 200,000. Just to put all this information that we get in these infomercials and information. Percentage of American adults who can name the Three Stooges is 59%. But how many people can name at least 3 U.S. Supreme Court justices? 17%. Go figure. Probably not that surprising to you. But anyway, I threw that in there because I found it pretty interesting, kind of funny. I try to break this one up a little bit with some humor because it's, makes us feel better, doesn't it? To know that we're not alone. That's the most important thing any of us can feel when it comes to our mental health and what's going on in our lives, is that we're not alone. Wow. It's just life-changing feeling. Changed my life. I can tell you that. I didn't get this job by accident. I did not suffer from virtual isolation or addiction to screen devices. Mine were more of the traditional type. But I know that as long as we understand that we're not the only ones who feel a certain way, it goes a long way toward helping each other and helping ourselves. So, most businesses do use their own products, we think, to promote confidence and loyalty, unless maybe they know something that we don't know. So what about Steve Jobs and that device that he created? You know the one I mean. The better than the laptop, better than the smartphone, the iPad back in 2010 called it extraordinary. Best, way better than laptop, way better than a smartphone. Incredible. 4 years later, he's interviewed by the New York Times, and the reporter asked him, well, I bet your kids love the iPad. What did Jobs say? Oh, they haven't used it. We limit how much technology our kids use. Why did you tell us that? For our kids. Oh, well. But I'm not trying to say the internet is a bad thing. No, nobody's going to tell us that and be believed. But I can tell you that we spent a lot of time on it, and it isn't just COVID related. And what we do with it and how we use it is ever changing. But a vast majority of us are just trying to find stuff or get our news online. According to Pew Research, 86% of U.S. adults get their news online. So it's a very powerful tool, isn't it? The internet. So let's look at some other statistics. These are pretty scary because one of the devices that we use all the time to go online is this thing we carry around with us, the smartphone. Yeah, these are interesting. I call them incredible. Sometimes they're scary statistics. When you know that the average smartphone owner unlocks their phone 150 times, that brain chemistry, it actually changes by the use of a smartphone for longer periods of time. I'm going to teach you the first of 2 or 3 new words today. I think they'll be new for you. Let's start with nomophobia. What is it? Well, let's just say this. It starts with the usual, this is how it starts. Where's my phone? Followed by anxiety and panic. That's the usual symptom is it's an utterance. Where's my phone? Yeah, 66% of the world's population shows signs of fear of not having their cell phone. No mobile phone. Nomophobia. Couldn't resist that one. I love that one. How about the fact that 71% of us sleep with or next to our phones? Kind of cuddle up with them, and 20% of people would rather go without their shoes for a week than go without their mobile phones. Yeah, there's been an increase in the amount of time we spend on our phones. 58% of us don't go an hour without checking our phones, and 40% of us check them in the middle of the night. What else are you going to do when you wake up in the middle of the night? Reach for the phone and check it. Check it for what? Check it for what? I want to ask you about why you charge your phone next to your bed a little bit later. I already know what the answer is. How about the number of times you touch, tap, swipe, poke your phone? The average user touches their phone over 2,600 times a day, and heavy users double that. Heavy users more than that, more than 5,000 times a day they touch their phone. So how long does it take you to check your phone when you get up in the morning? 80% of us, not just you, of us within an hour. And the average adult checks their phone every 12 minutes from the time they awaken until the time they go to sleep. Yes, they do. 80% of smartphone users check it within an hour, and the average person checks it every 12 minutes. Here's new word number 2. You've all been there before. you're having a conversation with someone and suddenly they start checking their phone right in front of you. It's called phubbing. And it's a growing problem. People are so addicted to their phones, they can't even put them down when they're in the middle of a conversation. Nearly 32% of people report being phubbed 2 to 3 times daily, also known as phone snubbing, thus phubbing. It's the act of ignoring someone in favor of a phone. It can happen in any conversation, whether it's a friend, with a family member, even a business associate. And the act of phubbing tends to be rude and inconsiderate behavior. It conveys that the person at the other end of the phone is more important than the person you're talking to. What the heck? Let's get together tonight. Sure, I'd like to come over and hang out while you talk and text with other people all the time. Yep, it can damage relationships. Eye contact is super important in bonding and developing oxytocin. 85% of us check our devices while speaking with friends and family. Oxytocin is that chemical that builds trust and connection. A lack of eye contact due to phubbing can make people feel like you don't care about them or value their time. So think about it the next time you do it in front of a family member, client, colleague, board member, during during any sort of a Zoom meeting. While people can see you, or also what are you going to turn off your camera so you can check your phone and they don't catch you? What causes it? It could be due to boredom. This is a serious part of this conversation. It could be a way for someone to find not just quick entertainment, but it can also be due to someone trying to avoid an awkward conversation or feeling socially anxious during social interactions. Phone snubbing can happen when someone becomes addicted to their phones. Whether or not phubbing is addictive, it's one thing. I'm not sure that you can qualify it as an addiction. Some people might over rely on phones and avoid social interactions. But when it becomes normal during social interactions, and starts to damage relationships, it can become dangerously addictive. And social settings and the use of a phone, when people start to become more comfortable texting someone who's several feet away than speaking to them, maybe we have to look at just what these devices are doing to us. So I must admit, I saved one more slide of incredible statistics about smartphone use for last, because I can't resist these. Here's the big news for everybody. 45% of people in this country would rather give up sex for a year than give up their phones. I'll let that sink in. 75% of mobile phone users use them while on the toilet. 19% have dropped them into the toilet. And 12% of Americans take a shower with their phone. Yes, no wonder 2/3 of us are addicted to our mobile phones. But this is serious stuff. 75% of users, not that the other things aren't serious, but 75% of users admit that they've texted at least once while driving. Distracted driving, legal issue, motor vehicle violation type issue. Cell phone addiction studies show smartphone use is more dangerous on the road than alcohol use. And I have a citation for this, a link. 26% of accidents involving cars are caused by cell phone usage while driving. It's now more dangerous on the road than alcohol use. Wow. Okay, the email. I mean, this one I only include because I have to come clean about this. I never fully succeeded with this problem. I found that a major distraction, and that's really what all this is about, is the word distraction. And preventing us from getting our work done as efficiently and being as productive as possible. Because of so many areas where we can be distracted with the internet, with smartphone usage, not just going online to check stuff out. As you know, when I'm going to talk about texts and other things in just a moment. But, you know, I would get a notification in the lower right-hand side of my monitor. And, you know, my eyes would go to that. Sometimes when I'm doing a CLE like this, because I have another monitor right behind this laptop that's in front of me with the camera, um, and the PowerPoint on it. So I keep another monitor behind here, and every once in a while, that's the one that my eyes would just go down to the right, and I see it, and I'd be wondering in here while I'm trying to speak to my audience. I wonder what's going on. I better get back to them as soon as I get done this. And I wonder if it could be, and it's a distraction. And I kept it up even though it bothered me. You know, they're not 911 matters. They're not priority. They really aren't. But if I treat them like I'm in some tennis match with Serena on the other side of the net, and, you know, receive, reply, receive, reply, receive, reply, back and forth, instant, got to do it quickly because I want it back and quick, just as quick. But when we talk about the text, the dreaded, talk about being shackled, and our text notifications. Wow. I just picked one company, Apple, 40 billion texts a day, 200,000. I think this is already outdated, this stat. It's not that old. Apple handles 200,000 texts per second. It's the number one, text messaging is the number one reported use of smartphones. 79% of use is texting. Texting. How much has it grown in the last nearly 20 years? Nearly 11,000%. So how quickly do you check your text notifications? A third of us check them within a minute. Over half within 5 minutes. What about that little notification that tells you when something's been read and the time, and you send a text, and then you see read 10:11 a.m., 10:12? What's going on? 10:13. Yo, what's going on? Aren't I important? What happened? We were having a conversation, and suddenly, that's the end? I know you read it. You're thinking, what's going on? How come I'm not getting a reply? We spend a lot of time on social media. A lot of time. You add it all up, 5 years and 4 months of your life. Add all those minutes up. All those different apps, all the different minutes per app. A lot of time spent on social media. And why? Back to dopamine. Since positive social interactions release dopamine, those experiences are transferred to the visual world, or excuse me, the virtual world, through our devices and our social media platforms. Each text message, email, and like on Facebook, Instagram, whatever you want to use, X, becomes a positive social stimulus when we keep craving more. While all this may seem harmless on the surface, these cravings for virtual stimuli set us up for screen addictions and take the place of healthier face-to-face interactions with friends and loved ones. Time spent outdoors doing other things. So weekly screen time on its way up. Now, some people may say, is it really harmful to us? Well, you know what? There are some digital device addiction warning signs that you need to think about. You know, think about those questions that we ask about alcohol use or other issues in our lives. And if you answer more than two of these affirmatively, you may want to reassess the amount of time you spend or the amount of alcohol you consume. So this would be a similar type of a survey. You know, whether or not you use red lights to answer social media posts. Is your phone always in your hand? Does your battery last all day if you don't have it plugged in? Have you been pulled over for texting and driving? Are you one of those people that takes it in the bathroom? Maybe even into the shower? You check it in the middle of the night? What's the last thing you do at night and the first thing you do in the morning? Reach for your phone and check emails and texts? I don't know. I mean, you have to look at it. But there is such a thing as digital device dependence. Some people push back on whether it's an addiction. But let's talk about something not quite as stigmatizing as the word addiction. Just the dependency. Does it increase your stress? Do you feel suddenly these false vibrations from the phone? Is it hurting your sleep pattern? Do you have anxiety waiting for messages or alerts? Do you find that it's making you aggressive or maybe sad and depressed, depending on, of course, what's going on in your life and how this is impacting it, as well as your everyday normal stressors? As an in-house corporate lawyer, your life is already filled to the brim with stress. The statistics tell us that. So if you feel like you're missing out on something, and next thing you know, you are so distracted that you can't perform your job properly, that's going to cause you even more anxiety. It's a vicious cycle. Sometimes it's physical. Eyes get blurred vision, strained, mobility issues, and this is the you'll see neck pain, headaches. I have at the bottom of the screen. It's commonly known now in non-medical terms as text neck. It's like this. Text neck. Just that act of lowering your head and staring into this device. The average head, even the average lawyer's head, puts 10 pounds of pressure on one's spine. That motion right there, looking down, increases it to the equivalent of 50 pounds of pressure. Text neck. Chronic pain and headaches due to lowering your head and walking around or sitting constantly with the phone in your hand. And in the meantime, your fingers or hands are starting to get a little achy from tapping, swiping, etc., etc. And yes, there is such a thing as digital device withdrawal. Withdrawal. So, if I were here today speaking about a more traditional dependency, addiction, alcohol, let's say, and I said, here are the signs of withdrawal from alcohol dependence: restlessness, anger, irritability, difficulty concentrating, sleeping problems, increased heart rate, cravings. They'd all be the same, in other words, as the signs of withdrawal from digital device dependence. When we try to cut back our use of a digital device, we get irritable, we get angry. We want to use it really badly. And sometimes we can't get any sleep. It just keeps us up. You know, we don't normally try to control things unless we struggle with them. You ever heard of anybody trying to limit the number of apples they eat a day? No. But things that, that are struggles, the cutting back on alcohol, drugs, digital devices, and many other things, those are the things we struggle with. So what I want you to make sure that you do, because I know that I sent this PowerPoint in PDF format to Audrey. She's going to pass it along to you if she hasn't done it already. She will be, because I don't really try to get through this whole PowerPoint. I really, it's half PowerPoint for during the presentation and half resource information. Thus all the different websites and links to articles and information. This part of it is really important. The strategies for improving your well-being and establishing better boundaries. This applies to not just digital device dependency and overuse of screen devices and virtual isolation. Okay, really. It's really these strategies involving how to set limits, create boundaries, about how often you check your emails, when you do it, perhaps trying to do it at certain times. You know, the X in that first one, check email X times a day. Come up with a number, live with it, and then make sure that you tell other people that this is when, you know, you can expect to get a response from me. This is when I check my emails. This is when I respond to them. Sound like an impossible task? If it does, then maybe you really have to step back and think about this. Okay? Because it's just part of being of effective time management. Is time management important? Sure, it's important for our jobs, but you know what else it's important for? It's a stress buster. Effective time management is a known stress reducer. Who needs stress reduction? In-house corporate lawyers. Your number one presenting issue is stress, too much to do and not enough time to do it. That's what I hear. That's what the answer is. I've got too much work and I don't have enough time to get my work done. Get distracted and it'll even be more difficult for you. So once again, set limits. Disconnect. Turn off notifications or use healthy notifications. What's a healthy notification? I have one that notifies me every 2 hours, and I'm looking at it right now. Take 5, it says. Every 2 hours, it comes up on my phone. Take 5. And that's the message to me to take 5. Take a 5-minute break. And I'm going to tell you what I do during that 5 minutes in just another minute. Don't charge your phone next to your bed. That's a challenge, not just advice. Challenge. You don't have to have it when you eat, when you exercise, when you socialize, but you don't have to charge it next to your bed. I heard you. I know it's your alarm clock. I heard it. So what's an alarm clock do? It goes off and wakes you up and gets you up and out of bed, right? Isn't that what an alarm clock is? That's what I thought. So let it be an alarm clock. Put it on the other side of the room. You want to get that tone, that sound, make it an annoying outburst of music that you hate to wake you up, get you up, turn it off. Oh, you mean it's wink, wink alarm clock? It's really something that you can do to check texts and emails when you open your eyes before you get out of bed. Last thing before you maybe tuck it under the pillow if you don't reach over and put it on the nightstand. Come on, be honest. Be objective too with yourselves. Manage those apps. Manage those apps. Turn off notifications. I already told you that. But no fubbing. Don't even have your phone with you sometimes. Install meditation apps, wellness apps, healthy apps, happy apps, let's call them. You ever heard of a stopping cue? You probably do. Some of you may even work for companies in California that develop some of these. I don't know. I don't know what everybody does. I don't know who my audience is, person to person, and who you work for. But I just know that there are some real smart neuroscientists who develop these apps, and they make sure that some of them don't have stopping cues. I could get into what they are, but I don't have time for that. You know what I'm talking about. So put some happy apps, some relaxation, some exercise, some reading, some education, some health, some wellness apps, meditation app, as opposed to something that has to do with entertainment or gaming or social networking, etc., etc. Because statistics tell us that we spend 3 times as much of our day per app per day as we do on with happy apps. And if something or someone is bothering you and making you unhappy, and it's an unhealthy world out there for you, because the virtual world can, as I said, have a negative impact on how you perceive yourself. That's unhealthy. The time you lose, it could have been spent forming relationships with others, developing and discovering passions, honing your skills, really can lead to a weakened sense of self-identity and confidence. You know, we start to compare ourselves to others through social media. This does nothing but decrease our own self-worth because what we see others post on social media is far from a reflection of their true character and lifestyle. Once again, just don't think of yourselves here. Think of your family members, and maybe they're struggling with this. It's important to remember that others' online profiles are a curated snapshot, not a full picture of real life's imperfections and challenges. You know, things aren't always as they appear. The grass isn't really greener, so to speak. So we have to rethink some things. We really do. Rethink great things. Experiences make us happier, not material things. Okay, we really need to remember this, and plan for them. Look forward to these experiences. Share them with others. Take care of ourselves. Self-care time. My ultimate challenge for anybody that ever listens to one of my CLEs is to spend 4% of your life taking care of the person that looks at you in the mirror every day. You, problem solver. Don't become a problem collector. Devote 4% of your life. What is that? It's an hour a day. 1 hour a day is the minimum we suggest, which is only 4% of your life, for self-care. Use a calendar and use technology healthy. Remind you to unplug. Take 5. It was every 3 hours. Then I got it down to every 2.5. Now it's down every 2 hours. And then you have to do it. Then you have to do it. That's the bottom line. You have to do it. Eventually, it'll work. Scheduling events that are away from screens. Being mindful, staying in the present, enjoying the moment. These are things you can do sitting right at your desk. Just pause. It can be part of your take 5. Lean back. Take a few deep breaths and just relax. Really, it's important. I prefer a meditation app, and I prefer it after saying no, can't, nah, won't work for the longest time. Can't keep my mind from wandering. Okay, that makes me like most people who start off with meditation apps, until you learn what it's about and how it can just gradually increase from a minute to 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. 10 minutes in the morning. And now I try 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes in the evening. Get 20 minutes of those 60 minutes. You know, I'm working my way through that 4% goal. Every hour, every 2 hours rather, take 5. I'm trying to stack it up to the point where I can say I've hit 60 minutes. I've hit my 4% of my goal has been met. But I don't beat myself up if some days I don't make it. Okay. Sometimes it's enough for me to just get my reminder on my phone at 8:30 a.m. That's when I set mine. What are you grateful for? What are you grateful for? Comes right down at the bottom of my phone. Every morning, 8:30 a.m. So I can't avoid it. Every day the word grateful stares me in the face, and I can stop, and I can either, my preferred way is to write it out on paper, journal it, watch myself write it. You can tap it out on your phone. I don't like that as much. It kind of defeats the mental health issue. I'm trying to avoid these things. Sometimes I may just have to say them to myself, depending on where I am. But I do it every morning at 8:30. Takes a minute. Okay? Activate the parasympathetic nervous system. In-house lawyers. Stress reducers. The sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight system. The parasympathetic nervous system is the rest and digest system. So these are the benefits that good sleep habits developing, check out this link to how you can set your table for success, how you can avoid some of the pitfalls of being in this adversarial profession of ours, where we're emotionally detached and we're always ashamed and embarrassed to ask for help. We don't. It doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to engage in this defense mechanism known as denial. So I'm going to leave you with this image right here. What you can do every single day to start that ripple. And sometimes it's just asking a question of another person. How are you? What's going on? What's new? And don't just accept the good, everything's great, fine, wonderful, great, thanks. Maybe be a little vulnerable. Our words, we as lawyers are like armor. We don't want anybody to pierce that armor and get to know us real well, because we think that that may be a sign of weakness. So be vulnerable, ask questions, get the ripple started, because maybe you'll impact someone else's life. Maybe it'll change your life, but more importantly, maybe it'll change someone else's life. So call your lawyer's assistance program. Remember that thing I told you early on. You're not alone. Never give up. If you're struggling, or if somebody in your family is struggling, ask for help. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian.